guys, it's Jen. This is another episode of Reframing Me, and I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Brubaker. Welcome back to the show. I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. If you are new, welcome. Reframing Me is a podcast where we use family communication theory to guide our conversations on issues that we are facing as moms who are raising teenagers. And we do like to sprinkle in some stuff for us too, because we know that this is a period of rediscovery for us. We are not only relearning how to be a mom now that our kids are older, but we are also relearning who we are as women. And what better way to do that than here with each other and with me? Honestly, somebody asked me the other day what the best part or what my favorite part or something was of doing the pod. And I really think that it's the sense of community that I feel, because I know that it can feel lonely sometimes. I mean, even when you're not alone, right? It can feel like everyone that you look at around is doing things and it looks like it's going so easy for them. And you wonder, like, is everyone else feeling the way that I'm feeling? Is everybody else dealing with the stuff that I'm dealing with? And you start questioning things and you're overwhelmed and you're confused. And I know I feel it sometimes. And I know that so many of you do too, because I know that a lot of you have reached out and told me that you're feeling it this way, that you look and you feel like everyone around you has it together, like their kids and their careers and they're eating enough protein. Oh my gosh, good Lord. Okay, so completely off subject, but do y'all feel like we're supposed to be eating a ridiculous amount of protein? Like, how can we possibly eat as much protein as we are supposed to? It's like, I feel like every time I look, it's like I need to eat more. And then I'm doing this intermittent fasting. I think I told y'all I've been doing that for a couple of months now. And I really like it. I can't put my finger on exactly what feels better, but I definitely feel good. And so I'm sticking with it. But I'm fasting for like 14, 15 hours a day. So it's like I'm only eating for like, say, 9-ish or 10, maybe max hours a day. So it's a crazy amount of protein that we're supposed to get into that small period of time. And then I'm a vegetarian. So that's always been a struggle for me to begin with. So anyway, I know I totally digress, but I really do love the sense of community that this podcast has me feeling with women everywhere. And did y'all know? Okay, so I looked this up. We have listeners in 58 different countries. Just our last episode has already been listened to by women in, of course, the US and Canada and Australia. Those are always our big ones, but also in Sweden and Germany, Pakistan, Bangladesh, New Zealand, Israel, Norway, the UK. There are women all over the world who are listening and who are feeling the exact same things. They are experiencing the same growth and the same change right now. And while no, they are not directly beside you, but yeah, they are there. And when someone asks me my favorite part, it is definitely that sense of community that I feel and I'm hoping that you feel with women from all over. And so I just wanted to share that with you and remind you that, because I know it's super easy to feel like it is only me who is going through this, but I promise you it is not. I have told you, and I'm sure that you're like, oh my God, yes, you've said this. Okay, so bear with me. I have told you that I am on this gratitude journey this month. So today was day 16, and I told you I am reading The Magic by Rhonda Byrne, and it's day 16, and it's 28 days, so you're going to have to bear with me for like 12 more. There's worse things I could be doing than telling you about all my gratitude. But today's chapter, it talked about health and about being grateful for our health and even using gratitude as a way way to manifest greater health or manifest healing. And so that then made me think about a study that I read recently, but of course I couldn't find that study. I swear that I sent it to myself, but it doesn't matter because it was just the overall concept that got me thinking, but about how our health is negatively impacted by anger, and especially by holding on to anger. In fact, studies do show, of course, I mean, not the study that I was trying to locate, but that is neither here nor there. But studies do show that prolonged anger can increase the risk of heart disease and high blood pressure, and it weakens our immune system. And the National Institute of Health found that frequent feelings of anger can totally impair the function of our blood vessels, which then increases our risk of cardiovascular disease, which as women, we have higher risks of to begin with. And the American Psychological Association found that chronic anger is linked to higher levels of inflammation, which I feel like inflammation is something that we are just learning more and more about all the time, and about the dangers of inflammation throughout our bodies and how it totally leads to lots of different chronic illnesses. And then, of course, anger clouds our judgment and negatively impacts our decision making. And it even leads to those long-term mental health issues like anxiety and depression. So it is toxic. Anger is toxic to both our minds and our bodies. And so that's what I thought that we would have a conversation about today. Anger, because I feel like y'all must see this too. People are angry. Everywhere that you go, I feel like I see someone who is angry. Like you see it on their faces and you hear it in the way that they talk to other people. And I feel like you can see it in the people to whom they are angry, like to or angry at. And I feel like it's a super relevant topic for us because really no one is angrier in general, like as a collective, as a demographic, than teenagers. I get it. I was angsty back when I had absolutely nothing to be angsty about. Do y'all still listen to and like love Alanis Morissette as much as I do? I mean, Jagged Little Pill is still like my favorite album of all time. It was the soundtrack for my college years, and I totally still listen to it regularly. And anytime I do, I'm like, what was I so angsty about? Like, why so mad, girl? I mean, there's nothing. In hindsight, what were we so mad about? I was like 20 and in college, and I didn't need to count the grams of protein, and I didn't even know what intermittent fasting was. And it was the 90s. Like, yeah, 2025, we totally have a lot to be angsty about, right? But it was the 90s. 2025 Jen, angsty would totally track now. But then, just why? But ironically, 1996 Jen was angry. 2025 Jen is zen. Should totally be the other way around, right? So I guess in the words of our queen herself, isn't it ironic? Don't you think? A little too ironic. I really do think. Okay, enough before I like break into song. But anyway, in 2025, everyone, not just teenagers, not just teenage Jen, college Jen, whatever, everyone is angsty now. But because they are teenagers and anger is part of the teen brand, I think that we should talk about it today. So why is everyone, especially our teens, why is everyone so angry? And then more importantly, how can we, as their moms, how can we navigate this emotional ordeal in a way that both supports our kids and also keeps our family running smoothly and the relationships intact? Because we have certainly talked about our families as a system enough times that y'all know one person's anger, it becomes this giant black cloud over your whole family very quickly. So that's, I think, where we should go with this. But let's start big. All right. Why is society so angry right now? It's almost like I feel like we should be saying more like, why isn't society angrier than they actually are? But no, that would be negative. We're grateful, grateful, gratitude, gratitude. I don't want to block my abundance. So have you noticed that like the world in your surroundings, like, have you noticed how everyone is just angrier? That can't just be me, right? From social media and being, fighting and being rude in comment sections to like how people drive and road rage. I mean, I just feel like everyone is just hanging on by a thread. Everyone is edgy. But why? Well, one major reason is chronic stress and just feeling totally overwhelmed. We live in a world that is constantly on. The 24/7 news cycle, it just hits us with bad news after bad news after bad news. Economic instability and global conflicts and political unrest and social upheaval and environmental concerns, and all of it is just creating a constant background noise of anxiety. And then on top of that, when you add in our individual pressures of work and of family and of like social obligations, and I mean, honestly, it is no wonder that people are super irritable and very quick to anger. And then we cannot forget the impact of social media. Platforms like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, although apparently by the time we record our next episode, TikTok won't exist anymore. But these platforms, they are designed to connect us. And in fact, they often end up doing just the opposite of that. The algorithms, we've talked about this, that is prioritizing content that is creating very strong emotions in us. And it's oftentimes even sparking outrage. And it does this in order to try to keep us engaged. We are exposed to a constant stream of comparisons and cyberbullying and global problems that we feel powerless to do anything about. And so this digital environment just throws fuel on the frustration and the anger that we are already feeling. And, totally, especially in younger generations, because they are more immersed in these online spaces than we even are. And so we also can't forget that we used to have a lot of community ties, and we've seen a huge erosion of those community ties over the last couple of decades, and many people are feeling much more isolated than they ever have before. And so the traditional support systems of your community and of your family, they have very much weakened. And this also goes into when we've talked about in Reframing the Conversation about so many family ties being damaged by the current situations that we face that are causing some of these stresses and causing some of this anger. And so all of this isolation, it just breeds even more frustration, which eventually turns into anger. And so our teens are at a very critical stage in their development, both their psychological and their emotional development. And then physically, their brains, that prefrontal cortex that we talked about, but their brains, the part that governs their decision making and manages their impulse control and like manages their reasoning, all of that is still developing. And so the brain's emotional center, though, it is totally active. And so their brains are very imbalanced because they have the one part that's developed, the other that's developing. And so this imbalance can make them much more prone, like we said in the episode where we talked about what is normal teen behavior. They're much more prone to intense emotional reactions, one of which is anger. And so the hormonal changes that they face during puberty, that amplifies their emotional responses, and it increases those mood swings, and it lowers their tolerance for anything that frustrates them, even in the littlest bit. And so it really is their brain and their hormones that is one of the main reasons that they just seem to snap so often, and they just seem to be angry so often. It is literally their bodies that they can't control. And teenagers are also, they're striving to be autonomous, right? They want to be more grown up than they're able to be at this point. And they are trying to figure out who they are. They're forming those identities. And I know that we have referred back to Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development in the past. And so we know that our teens have this challenge of trying to figure out what their identity is and what their role is, and being confused by where they fit into everything, and being confused by who they are. And so they're on this quest for self-definition, and that can lead to problems with authority figures like us, or like their teachers, or anyone who's trying to tell them what to do, when they feel that these rules or these boundaries are a threat to that independence that they are striving to create. And so they have social pressures, and they have academic demands, and they have friendships that are evolving and relationships that are forming. And teens, oftentimes, they feel threatened, they feel misunderstood. And so this heightened sensitivity to stress manifests itself as anger sometimes when they do feel misunderstood by us, or they feel threatened by rules that are imposed on them. And teens can oftentimes mask their deeper emotions. Remember when we talked way back in about It's Not About the Socks, and we talked, still one of my favorite episodes when I think about it, but when we talked about It's Not About the Socks, when we talked about something being a metaphor for something else. And anger in teens is oftentimes, it's masking the deeper emotions that they're feeling, things like fear or sadness or disappointment or their insecurity. So like a teen who maybe lashes out about the rules that you have set up, they might actually be struggling with something else, maybe with peer pressure or academic anxiety or feeling inadequate. And so if we can recognize that anger is oftentimes with our teens, it's the secondary emotion. It's not what is actually wrong. It's just what is really wrong is manifesting itself in anger, especially towards us, because we're their safe place. We're their safe person. And so they tend to lash out at us because of something else that they can't lash out at, or maybe that they're not even recognizing is going on. And so if we can recognize this, then we can definitely understand and address it a lot more effectively with them. All right. Now, a big issue is, of course, like we already started to mention, the influence of social media. And, today's teens, we obviously know that they are deeply connected to the social media. And so this can trigger and it can amplify the anger that they're feeling, primarily through social comparison is really, that's a huge one. Seeing everyone's lives, but not their real lives, right? Seeing the perfectly curated versions of everyone's life. Cyberbullying, exposure to negative content, all of it can contribute to greater feelings of inadequacy or frustration or feeling excluded. The constant feedback loop that they are facing and the constant approval that they are seeking from things like getting likes or getting comments or the pressure with online interactions, all of it heightens emotional responses, and it reduces the opportunities then for any kind of real world emotional regulation. And so their emotions are much more all over the place, and anger is obviously one of those emotions that is all over the place. Now, societally, there are some differences in how boys versus girls express their anger. Much of this comes from shockingly societal norms, as the research shows that boys are more encouraged to express their anger outwardly, whereas girls are socialized to kind of suppress that anger or express it in more indirect ways. And so if we can understand these differences, it can help us to respond appropriately and guide our teens towards healthy emotional expression. And, I know how I always think it's funny that anger has been kind of rebranded as not being an emotion. It's like, no, anger's an emotion. Oh, women are so emotional. Yes, women can be emotional, but so are men. No, 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 no. Well, yes, anger's an emotion too, but it has just been a rebranded emotion. But in our families, again, I digress. But in our families, anger can manifest itself in our family communication. We said in a family system, nothing occurs in isolation. Everybody's behavior, everybody's emotions, everything that happens to one person, because our family is a social system, everything that happens to one person impacts and influences the others. And it always influences the dynamics between all of the different family members. And so teens may express their anger through like yelling or sarcasm or withdrawing or passive aggressive behaviors. And so those communication patterns then can create cycles of conflict where us as their parents, we might react to their anger in another way, whether it's by shutting down or retaliating or over accommodating, but it will then potentially reinforce the teen's emotional state. If you get angry because they're angry now, it just reinforces their anger. And so we create these cycles, and then somebody else gets involved, because if two people are angry in a family system, now guess what? That spreads out to everyone else. And so you can go from having a very smooth functioning family situation to one where everyone is negatively impacted very quickly. And so we understand that families operate within this framework of this interconnection of our emotions. So a change in one family member's behavior, like a teen's anger, it can impact the whole system. And we may unconsciously respond to anger that we see coming from them with anxiety of our own. And so that can potentially lead to micromanaging or disengaging from the family itself or from the teen. And so this reciprocal pattern then can escalate conflicts, and it can create much more rigid roles where you have the teen who has become the angry one, whereas the mom then has become the anxious one. And we all fall into these patterns of unhealthy communication. So, all right, before we get into like, hey, how can we make this better? Like strategies to make this better, because, I can't leave you hanging and just tell you that it's a mess without giving you some idea of how to fix it. Okay, so why are teens so angry? Notoriously, why are teens so angry? Teens' anger is complex. It's driven by that mix of biological and social and environmental and emotional pressures. So let's talk about the probably top what do I have here? 10. The top 10 reasons that teens are so angry. Number 1, their brains and their bodies, they are changing. We said that the part of the brain that controls their decision-making and their impulse control, that prefrontal cortex, it is still developing. And then you have the emotional center, which is like totally in overdrive. And then you add in those hormonal surges and the emotions, they become intense. Number 2, they're figuring out who they are. Who are they? Who do they want to be? Teens are stuck between wanting that independence and yet needing guidance. And so this is going to cause a very organic friction with parents or teachers because they want to be independent. They want to be grown up. And so it's very frustrating for them because they still need so much. Number 3, life can feel very overwhelming, right? And especially to teenagers. They are faced with school pressures and social expectations and friendships that can be incredibly stressful. And so all of that can make it very hard to cope. Number 4, they're not sleeping enough. Okay, they have late nights and they have early mornings and they have lots of screen time, which we all know, even though we still do, we all know that screen time totally messes with our sleep. And so, it's easier when they're younger teens and you can kind of still have like a bedtime. But once they're in high school, I mean, they have schoolwork and they have activities and they have sports and they have practices and they have jobs and they have social lives and they just are not getting enough sleep. And tired teens are angry teens. And number 5, social media. Social media isn't helping. Social media doesn't help anything except recipes and like little hacks on TikTok, which is going away. So social media isn't helping. There is that constant comparison. There is cyberbullying. There is the pressure to keep up with their online relationships. And all of this just fuels their anxiety and their frustration, which manifests itself in, you got it, anger. Number 6, family tension. Okay, family tensions, if there are family tensions at home, any type of conflict, any type of stress or sibling rivalry or arguing, which is oftentimes coming because of their anger, ironically. Oh, look, should I go back into, isn't that ironic? But all of that can definitely make them feel more emotionally unstable. Number 7, they feel powerless in their lives. They are being told what to do all the time at home. They're being told what to do at school. And they feel like there are a lot of decisions, even decisions about their life or decisions about what they are allowed to do, but they are being told what to do all the time. And so this feeling of exclusion from making decisions about their behavior can create a great deal of resentment. Number 8, they might have emotional needs that are being unmet. When a teen feels like they are being misunderstood or they are being invalidated, they may lash out as a way to express those deeper emotions. And number 9, they're living in a world that they worry about. Teens are increasingly, much more so than we were, even though we were so angsty back in the 90s, but they are much more aware of societal issues that are going on. Political upheaval and civil unrest, social justice, climate change, and all of this can feel very overwhelming to them. And so that feeling of helplessness can also manifest itself in anger. And number 10, mental health struggles, especially post-COVID. We see so much more anxiety and depression in everyone, but especially in teenagers. And anxiety and depression and ADHD, all of it can make it harder for our teens to regulate their emotions, which leads to more anger. So the million dollar question, what can we do as their parents? How can we help them to manage their anger? If we can truly understand the root causes of our teens' anger, it can allow us to respond to them from a place of empathy. And I think that empathy with our teens is oftentimes something that gets lost. And it's not that we don't love them, and it's not that we don't care, and it's not that we are intentionally trying to make it seem that how they're feeling is wrong. But I think sometimes we forget what it was like. All right, maybe we should listen to a little bit more Alanis. To remember what it was like to feel that anger, to feel that angsty. And so if we can understand what is causing this, all of those reasons, all of those things that are causing the teen anger, it can help us to respond with empathy and some kind of effective strategies. The main strategy, the main behavior that is probably also the hardest sometimes, but the main thing that we can do is to stay calm and to model emotional regulation. I know if we could just keep our emotions and our anger under control, right, it will totally help. And our reactions to their behavior set the tone. And I think that we need to oftentimes remind ourselves of that. Practice the pause. Remember, practice the pause. Pause before responding. Pause before reacting, because our reactions, our responses set the tone for the interaction. And so if we can respond calmly, it does help to regulate the situation and to teach emotional control. Also, that validation we've mentioned before, validate their feelings, acknowledge their feelings without judgment. To us, much of the things that they feel frustrated about, it feels trivial because we're looking at it from an adult's perspective. But if we can feel that empathy and look at their situation from a place of understanding and from a place of empathy and validate their feelings, it can go a long way. Even simple phrases like saying, I can see that you're frustrated. I can understand why you're frustrated. It helps our teens to feel heard. If we can help with encouraging outlets for them, healthy outlets like supporting activities, like getting involved in exercise or art or journaling, limiting screen time, encouraging sleep and wellness, teaching them about meditation. If we can give them these coping skills, if we can give them and help them with these outlets, then it can give a way for them to work through their anger that is much more productive. If we can have open communication channels, creating an environment with our teens where their emotions can be expressed in a safe and open and non-judgmental space. If we can talk about our feelings, talk about their feelings, talk about their concerns, their stressors, know what's going on in their life without judgment. If we can have this open communication environment, it can be proactive in addressing the issues before they even escalate towards anger. We can demonstrate how we handle frustration and how we handle our anger constructively. So, like saying very often, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. So, I'm going to go take a couple of minutes to kind of calm down. It teaches them, it's that modeling of emotional expression that it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel overwhelmed or overstimulated. We all feel this way, but showing them the healthy ways that you manage it. My kids know that I would be a hot mess if I did not work out every day, that I totally use exercise to manage my emotions, to manage my stress. And they know that it's really, really important to me. So they see that as being a tool to handle it. They even can tell, and I am more than happy when I see it too, to point out to them that I'm feeling overstimulated. It's healthy to show them the way that we manage our emotions. And so that can be a strategy that you can proactively use to help them manage their own. Teaching them an emotional vocabulary, like helping them understand something beyond they're mad or they're angry. That can help to kind of get at those deeper feelings, those deeper issues that they're having that are manifesting as anger, but it's not really that they're angry. They're disappointed about something. They're embarrassed about something. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling overstimulated. Maybe help them recognize that maybe it's coming from a place of insecurity. But if they can have the emotional vocabulary and the emotional IQ, which we can help them develop, then they can recognize that maybe they're not mad. Maybe there's something else going on. And again, that's something that by having that kind of emotional intelligence ourselves, that we can teach them about. We can help problem solve collaboratively. So if there are certain rules that they are feeling constrained by, problem solve collaboratively with them to figure a situation that might help everybody. The expectations that you have, the consequences for things. If we can ask for their input, it can foster a sense of control. They can feel a lot more responsibility and maybe not feel as constrained by things, leading to frustration, leading to anger. Now, we all know anger is a totally natural emotion, but how we understand and how we respond to it can make all of the difference in our relationships. And so if we can explore the roots of our teens' anger, and if we can provide them with the tools and the support that they need, we can help them to navigate it with resilience and with empathy, which is what we want when we're creating this kind of how do we want our children to respond in life's challenging situations. Thank you for joining me today. And always, I hope that you have enjoyed the show and I hope that you have learned something about anger today and it's helped you out a little bit. If you have, please share the show with your friends because that is how we will grow our community and manifest all of my dreams. Please find me on socials. It is Reframing Me everywhere. And until the next time, be well and communicate.